Right. In light of Jamie Carragher's comments on the African confederations, which he has since clarified his stance on, I believe we need to shine a light on Oceanian football. Now, looking at Oceanian football, I believe it doesn't really get its flowers, and that's because of its competitive nature. Like, it barely gets a mention at all when we're talking about continental tournaments such as the Gold Cup, Cup America, AFCON, the AFC tournament, or the European Championships. Like, OFC football barely is given a mention when we talk about international football. And for those of you who are big on Oceanian football, I'd like to know why Oceanian football doesn't get a mention. I mean, I do get that. I do get the reason why Oceanian football often goes under the radar due to its competitiveness, due to its perceived level of football. Like, we know New Zealand dominates that tournament all the time, with the exception of Tahiti, who won a tournament for the first time back in 2012, and the following season made a decent showing at the Confederations Cup, where they scored a solitary goal. And I still remember who that goal scorer was to this day, Jonathan Tejau. But they did lose heavily to both Spain and Uruguay, though. But anyway, why does Oceanian football not get a mention? I mean, sticking with Oceanian football, I think about New Zealand a lot, who dominate the OFC Nations Championships. And I often think to myself that should they make the move that Australia did all those years ago? Now, on the one hand, maybe they should move to Asian football so they can improve their competition. Because let's be honest, New Zealand taking on the likes of Solomon Islands and Fiji, it's not really helpful for them in terms of moving forward. Like, they want to be playing competitive games all the time, and they're not really doing that when they're playing sides who have never showcased their talent at any World Cup. But on the other hand, they shouldn't make the move. They should stay put in OFC rather than making a move to AFC like Australia did all those years ago. With the reasoning being is that now OFC gets a direct spot at a World Cup, as previously, in order for an OFC nation to qualify for a World Cup, they'd have to go through a playoff against, I think, a South American nation. Like, I do recall Australia having to go through that. Well, I don't actually recall it, but it's something I saw a while ago. Anyway, Australia had to go through that against Uruguay back in 2005. But nowadays, there is one direct spot for an Oceanian team to qualify for the World Cup. So maybe New Zealand should stay put in Oceania. Now, moving on to the club side, we see, I think, is it Auckland United or Auckland City FC, who play at the FIFA Club World Cup most often. Now, we see them all the time, but they don't really make a big stamp on a tournament like African sides do. Like, briefly going on to African football, we saw TP Mazembe reach the Club World Cup final back in 2010, which was the first time an African team had made the Club World Cup. But like TP Mazembe did back in 2010, that's what you'd want to see from an Oceanian side. Like, you want to see, aside from Oceania, make a stamp like that. And if they do, would people take Oceanian football seriously? Going back to Jamie Carragher's comments on African football, for me, once again, it just shows a lack of understanding about African football from certain sectors of European media. But I'm glad he has since clarified his comments about that. So now I could just like say that this episode just goes away now or whatever. But going back to Oceanian football, what can Oceanian football do to ensure it's taken seriously among sectors of the wider world? And to end, I believe that each and every continental title has its own merits, and I believe that winning AFCON or winning the Ocean Football Championships is the same as winning Copa America or the Gold Cup, or the Euros, or the Asian Championships. Like, I understand that certain levels are bigger, and I also understand that the Euros and Copa America are without doubt the most competitive, but that doesn't mean that we can just like shove aside other continental tournaments and say they're not as important. And especially with Oceanian football, because I believe that's also important. I really do believe that Oceanian football is very underrated. I mean, it's more underrated than African and Asian football because barely anybody pays attention to it. Like, if I can name one footballing nation besides New Zealand in Oceania, that would be Tahiti. And I didn't even know they played football until 2013 when they made their debut at that year's FIFA Confederations Cup. But all in all, I really do believe that we need to shine a light on Oceanian football, and with this summer's Club World Cup coming, I believe that will be a great time to shine a light on Oceanian football, as Club World Cup semi-regulars Auckland City FC will be playing there, and I for one would like to see them do well at that tournament. One more thing, like we've seen New Zealand players such as Chris Wood, Ryan Nelson, and Winston Reid all play that trade in European football. But what I'd like to ask you guys to do is like just put your comments in below about which other Oceanian players you've seen in Europe, because off the top of my head, I only know of those three. But which other Oceanian players have you seen? And no, the likes of Mark Cahill, Tim Cahill and Mark Viduka don't count, or maybe they do. But Australia play in Asia and have done for like I think over 10 years now. So besides those, which other Oceanian players have played in Europe? Right, one more thing that's just come to mind. I've been hearing from some sectors that the OFC should merge with the AFC. Now, will this be a good idea? If so, what would be the potential benefits of this? Would this be a bad idea? And if so, what would be the drawbacks of OFC merging with AFC? I'd like to know your thoughts on that, because thinking about it, it's a really interesting topic of debate. Like I've heard some people say that yes, maybe OFC should merge with AFC as it'll improve competition, because New Zealand don't really get a lot of competition. But I've heard others say that no, OFC and AFC shouldn't merge as it'll worsen worsen the footballing landscape amongst those regions. But I'd like to know what you think on that.